today, everybody. Today we're doing a scrapbook layout. I'm calling it the Musical Dancers layout, just because it's a nice motif today for pretty much any of your dancer sort of stamps that you have lying around. It's a nice simple layout. We're doing a little bit of stamping and some embossing, and we're going to be triple embossing on a piece of chipboard just for something a little bit extra in a layout. So for today, we're going to need our papers. We're going to need a dark grey piece. This is just a strip we're going to need from this. If you would like to change the colour of the layout, this is the piece that you need to change of paper. A 12-inch piece of black. This is for our photo mats and to do a little bit of embossing onto. Our two backing pieces of scrapbook paper. This is going to be the base of our layout. And some foil cardstock. This is just $2 shop cardstock that I've picked up. For the stamps today, I'm using this nice musical trill, a musical sentiment, another dancing sort of sentiment, and two ballerina stamps. For our inks, we're going to need a grey colour. This is the ink colour to change if you want to do a different colour for the layout. And just some Memento black or any black ink that you have. Embossing tools, puff static, some embossing ink, silver embossing powder, and a heat gun. And I'm also using today a piece of chipboard. This is a border, a musical one that matches the stamp that I'm using today. So our first step up today is our cutting. We're going to cut our 12-inch piece of cardstock first. Our first cut is into 6 inches. And with our first strip, we're then going to cut it into 8 1/4 inches. And that's our first piece. And this will keep for stamping. And then from our second 6-inch strip, we're going to cut 2 4-inch photo mats. And again, keep the leftover piece for stamping. Next is our silver foil. So out of our silver foil, we need to cut a 4 1/4 by 6 1/4 piece. And then another so for this bit actually, sorry, I'll just do the 6 1/2 piece first. By 8 3/4. And then from this piece, we'll cut our other photo mat of 6 1/4 by 4 1/4. So far we've got 2 4 1/4 by 6 1/4 pieces, one 8 3/4 by 6 1/2 quarters. And then we have our 6 by 8 and 1/4 piece. And 2 6 by 4 pieces. Then from our dark grey, we're just going to cut a 2-inch strip. So this is something good to grab from your leftovers. And that is our cutting for today. So if we grab out our 2 base pieces and place them down, we can then place our pieces so that we get an idea of how the layout will kind of come together. This just helps you plan your stamping a little bit better for the right. Okay. So next we're going to do our stamping. The first thing we're going to stamp onto both of our pages is our musical trill. This is because we're then going to line up the dancing ladies onto the top to make it look like they're dancing on the notes. For this part of the stamping, I'm just going to be using Memento ink, as I just want a nice solid black. And this is just an easy ink to clean. Lots of nice little pats. That way you have less chance of getting that edge onto your stamp. And I want it a little bit darker, so I'm just going to stamp it again. One of the advantages to the hinge stamper. And I press slightly hard there. Much better. And then we're just going to repeat this process with our right page. And again, just realign. Probably need to re-ink my pad, that's why it's a bit light. There we go. Okay. And next step with both our dancers is we're going to place them on top and stamp them in our grey. If you're changing to another colour to match your photos, changing your ink at this point for the ballerinas will help as well to match. Now I've cut my stamps kind of fine just so that I can try and do things like this. So I've estimated that it's about 2-3 mils. So that's what I'm going to place actually onto the trill of the music to try and get it to line up better. I just want to go a bit more so that we get the nice contrast. And that is our right page's stamping done. And now on the left, we're just going to repeat the same. And that is our ballerina stamping done. Sorry everyone, just giving them a clean. Okay. So next we're going to move on to our embossing. So first off, we're going to emboss whatever sort of dance sentiments you've got that you can use for this today. And we're going to do this on the remaining part of our black cardstock. And I'm just doing this onto the flat side of my card, just so we get a nicer impression over the weave side of the actual stamp, not the weave. So I'm a big fan of the puff static just because I don't like little indents and try to reduce the fallout. The puff static just gives you a much cleaner impression of your stamp when you're embossing. And I normally like to emboss smaller things like this onto larger pieces of cardstock, just so that way I actually have an area to hold so that I then don't get my fingers through my actual embossing. And then just cut them down to size after I've heated them up and set them. Number 1. And number 2. And then I just have this handy little craft tray with a funnel, but you can also use a piece of paper or anything like that for your method that you prefer to put your embossing powder in. Okay, I'm going to heat gun these two and set them first before we move on to our chipboard. Okay, if you bring down your pages now. We are actually going to place our photo mats onto our page. And then we're going to check out that we've got enough leftover foil to go around our sentiments and place them on. And then we're going to do the big final piece, which is our chipboard. I'm just going to get out my silver stickles and add a bit to the gaps in the dress on both dancers before we set this aside to do our chipboard, so it has a bit of time to dry. And if you've changed the colour of your layout and have different coloured dancers, you could always use Stardust, which goes with pretty much any colour, for a bit of extra bling. Now I'm just going to move these aside to a bit and bring out our chipboard. Okay, so to triple emboss, it's literally what its name means, which is triple embossing. So the reason I like to do this on the feature pieces in layouts or cards or anything that I'm making is just it gives a really nice, smooth, even layer that you'll see at the end. And as you see each layer, little bumps and things like that sometimes cause the chipboard to have absorbed the embossing ink at different rates. It causes little bubbles and things like that. And this just gives a really good finish. So you want a nice good layer on it, especially for the first one. And then you'll have to place your piece into the actual embossing powder. Don't worry if there's any little bits that you've missed, because with the 3 layers, it will all come together. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. I was just tidying up a tiny bit. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we can now remove all of our tape from underneath, if you haven't already. And then using whatever clear drying adhesive you have, because mine snapped, I'm going to glue the main portion first and then line up the small portion. I am a bit of a messy crafter, so I usually do a bit of a glob and then kind of smear that around onto the edges and things. And for this, it's going to run through our larger photo mat. To divide the 2 photos. Of course. There we go. To finish off this layout, I'm now going to adhere my grey strip to the side. This is just to cover the second part of the flowers. But I think I may actually cut it down to about 1 1/4. So I've cut mine down to 1 1/4, 1 1/2, sorry. So this is now a 1 1/2 by 12-inch strip. And then I think I'm just going to finish it off with some pearls today. I don't always go for stringed pearls, but I think I will on this. And I think I'm going to use some washi tape actually as well on the side. Just to match in, and I always like a bit of extra bling. Just overlapping your two pieces where they join and bring your chipboard back on top. Then I just tuck this around the back to finish it off. Okay. Let's start off with the dancers. And we're just going to put little belts on them of the pearls. Oops. Only needed 4. But we'll stick this one on a flower.